welcome back to Robin Minds. Now, when you think sports in Nigeria, what comes to mind? Football, right? Soccer, but also athletics. And very recently, we've seen a third sport come to dominate in Nigeria, and I'm talking about basketball. I mean, given the stellar performance of the Tigress at the Olympics, the Paris 2024 Olympics, where they were the first African team, both either men or women, to play in a quarterfinals. Indeed, there has been a resurgence, there's been more interest, there's been more adoption of basketball here in Nigeria. And I know that has also extended to the continent of Africa. And this hasn't happened by chance. We have organizations that have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to see this adoption at the grassroots. Joining me on Robin Minds today is Bimsola Abudu, who is the NBA Africa Vice President and Country Head of NBA Nigeria. Welcome to Robin Minds.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Well, as a leading voice in African basketball, what excites you the most about the new season? I know for me, I'm more interested after the girls performed so well, and I can't wait to even see more performances, see more basketball games. But for you, what excites you?
I mean, several things I find very exciting about the new season. We kicked off the new season this past week. And I think I will start by saying that in Nigeria, several of the grassroots programs we have coming up, it's quite exciting. We have an elite basketball camp that we host once a quarter that gives young, talented athletes in Nigeria the opportunity for them to sort of showcase their skills to coaches in NBA Africa. And what that means is they get the opportunity to be selected for some of the programs we do in different parts of the world. And I would say the first one we launched in Nigeria was in July. And I'm proud to say that two of the kids there were selected to be part of the NBA Academy and have now moved to Senegal for the Academy. And I think NBA season just as a whole, I know we all saw the debut of LeBron and his son, like the first father-son duo ever in the history of the NBA to play together. And bringing it back here locally as well, we rolled out a really cool campaign that's called My NBA Moment NG. So we're getting our NBA fans here in Nigeria and in the diaspora for them to share with us their favorite NBA moment. And the first video actually we launched was with the head coach of the Nigerian women's national team. You have the likes of Akin Motosho, who's a filmmaker who made a movie about Giannis and his family. So just really engaging our fans, where for us, the work we do here, we focus on grassroots, but at the same time, as we focus on grassroots, is increasing the viewership of NBA games and giving people the opportunity to engage with the brand. And I would say we're actually the number 2 sport in Nigeria.
Yes. So you were taking
football.
athletics.
Yes, we're number 2 in Nigeria. The most watched and also participated team sports in Nigeria is basketball. Yeah.
And what would you say resonates with people at the grassroots? Because there's a lot of belief in football as an economic, a viable career. They've seen so many Nigerians go to play in all the big leagues across the world. But at the grassroots, as you engage with them, how do they begin to see basketball as that viable number 2 sport in Nigeria?
The interesting thing is a lot of them do already. When you talk about basketball in Africa, the first person that comes to mind is Akim Olajuwon, who was drafted in 1984. And he really was the one who opened Africa to the world when it comes to basketball. And we look at, since then in the history of the NBA, you've had over 120 players of African descent, and more than half of those are Nigerians. So the reality is, like, Nigerians already play basketball, already engage in basketball. So in the grassroots level, you find a lot of the kids that participate in some of the programs we do, and even when we go into the communities, they're really excited about basketball. I think for one of the things you mentioned about it being a viable sport, and I think sports just as a whole is one of the key things that I'll say the NBA and a lot of stakeholders in the sports industry just really trying to demonstrate sports as a business, right? So beyond just the talent, it's like you have to look at the whole ecosystem of the sports industry and showing that whether it's sports tourism, sports medicine, sports retail, all the different facets, and showing that it's just a viable industry as the next. And why does that matter to the youth? Is if you don't become a basketball player, not everybody's going to become a basketball player, right? But there's so many opportunities within the value chain of basketball that you can become a sports lawyer. You can be a lawyer that focuses on, for all the athletes, they have agents. You can be a manager. You can be an operator like myself. So really just showing that being able to acquire those skills, the fundamental skills of basketball from a grassroots level. But what's so unique about this sport than most, and if I may say, is like while kids are learning fundamental skills of basketball, we're equipping them with life skills, like life skills that stays with them for the rest of their life.
So my next question will be to look at some of those initiatives that you mentioned. You spoke about the ones at the grassroots. How are these initiatives not just raising the profile of basketball in Nigeria and by extension on the continent, but how are they also enriching lives? Like you spoke about those skills that they also learn, those life skills.
So, I think that's a really good question, because for the programs we do on the grassroots level, I see them as nation building programs. They're social development programs. And why would I say that? I look at our global junior MBA curriculum. We were very intentional to modify that to address the realities in Nigeria. And what I mean by that is we looked at research, and what research said, what are some of those 4 skills that your average Nigerian kid will require for the future of work? And those 4 skills being leadership skills, critical thinking, emotional intelligence, and communication skills. And we modified our global curriculum to focus, to emphasize that. So what does that mean? It's like a kid is enjoying learning how to play basketball. At the same time, they're learning these skills in a fun environment that they don't even realize that those skills are being instilled in them at that moment. And for us, that's very important, because with the MBA, no matter where we go, no matter where we do business, it's about how are we giving back to the environment that we exist in. And for us, I think just in Nigeria as a whole, we know that Nigeria is the purveyor of culture in Africa right now. And it's one of the reasons why in 2022, we launched the MBA Meets Culture platform, focused on the 5 pillars of culture, being art, fashion, film, music, and tech. And we've come up with very interesting programs within those different pillars, and ensuring that it helps to elevate and spotlight Nigerians. And I say this is in Africa now, Africans in that space. And I'll say the first one everyone talks about whenever you mention this is the halftime show that happened last year with Burna Boy, Thames, and Rema. It was the first time ever in the history of the NBA where you had an African perform, talk less of having 3 Africans, and it was an Afrobeats themed halftime show. I think one thing we're quite excited about that we just concluded in September is we launched an accelerator in April of this year. And the accelerator is a Pan-African program where it's how do we spotlight and elevate startups in the sports and in the creative industry? How to give them access to capital? How we give them access to the MBA network? And I'm happy to say that we took 10 finalists from Africa to New York for them to pitch to business leaders and dignitaries a demo day at the MBA headquarters along the sidelines of the UNGA. 4 of the finalists were Nigerians, I would say. And it was great, just amazing, inspiring night. And we narrowed it down to the top 4. And number 1 was Nigerian, Tix Africa. And number 2, Salibuta, and really cool, innovative ideas to 10 issues. And it goes back to what are the different things that we're doing, that how is the MBA taking its brand and what we do, and really showing people that even with basketball, everything we do, basketball is the hero, but we do a lot of work beyond what people would typically think, that it's just about playing basketball. Yes. It's critical, and that's the core of our business. But at the same time, we know that MBA is culture. So how do we seamlessly find a way to embed the brand in different elements of culture?
And listening to you, I can just see the value chain and the opportunities. Like you said, not everybody will bounce that ball and throw that basket, but there's so many opportunities. And to have those things come to life, those initiatives come to life, how important has the partnerships been? The role of government, for example, the regulatory bodies. Tell us about that.
I think no one can build an industry on their own, right? And no one can pretend to. I think partnerships are very crucial. I think for us, there are 2 types of partnerships. You have the other corporations working with us. So I think I mentioned the Triple Double Accelerator. I would say our partners were Koramo Capital. We had Paystack as a partner, and NUTM. And you have different organizations working with us to enable these programs to happen, because we can't do all of it by ourselves, right? This investment, it has to be that critical mass of investment that really enables the building of a value chain. I think from a government standpoint, I mean, I'd say that's very important as well, because having government support in whatever you do. And one of the key things that I would say happened in Nigeria that was very important for anyone who's a sport practitioner is the reclassification of sports from being just mere recreational to actually being a business sector. So that means, one, it's being taken seriously, that this is a business. So that's great. I think the second thing is, I know that was just a recent shuffle.
Where they moved the Ministry of Sports.
Yes. But prior to that, that Minister of Sports, Senator John, had worked very closely with us in terms of what are some of the key policies that are important for development of sports in Nigeria. And we look forward to the president of the National Sports Commission, and how we can work closely with him as well to ensure that we're all working collectively to develop this industry in Nigeria.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you. I'm just really interested, because I think a lot of people, they spend so much of their time, their money, on these other sports like football, for example, but looking at the viability of basketball, especially what you're doing to raise a new generation. How hopeful are you that, one day basketball will be that leading sport where maybe instead of, buying the jerseys, for example, of some of the foreign teams, this time we'll be buying Nigerian jerseys, we'll be wearing them. And just like the Hakeem Olajuwon craze will just be all on our lips.
You know what? I don't think we're too far away from that. I mean, this work that we're doing, that the NBA is doing, the reality is a lot of people had already set the foundation for it, right? You've had a lot of individuals who have paved the way and sort of tilted the soil before we came here, and really given us the opportunity to build on top of that. And I truly believe that with the work we're doing from a grassroots level, and I love what you said, that how many kids will bounce basketball from the moment a child picks up a basketball as a kid, all the way down to when they play professionally, is really defining what that pathway is. And the more we work with other stakeholders to really define that pathway and bring others along, I'm very confident that it's only a matter of time that would happen. I think it is worth stating, when you say Nigeria, I mean, wearing Nigerian jerseys, a lot of people do wear a lot of the Nigerian players' jerseys already. You have the likes of your Precious Achua, you have OG. But what's very interesting is that for NBA Africa, NBA started a local league in Africa about 5 years ago called the Basketball Africa League. And it's a joint venture between the NBA and FIBA. And the whole idea is, how do we get basketball players in Africa to play on the continent and make money doing that on the continent? And I would say our Rivers Hoopers, they represented Nigeria in season 4 that concluded in May, and they came in 3rd place. I mean, they really represented. And I can tell you that with the investment the NBA is making through the BAL, you find that more teams across the continent, right, are finding ways to engage more in basketball. So I think it's just only a matter of time that you bring all these coordinated efforts together, you will see more, for sure. You see more basketball, that maybe you see more kids bouncing balls versus kicking the balls in the future.
Right. So what role do you think NBA Africa can play in fostering diversity? Because that's really big now, and inclusion, especially through basketball, particularly in Nigeria. So that whole diversity and inclusion is so important in the sport. I
think it's the core of what the NBA represents. And the way it shows up for us here in our programs is we make sure that we give young boys and young girls the same opportunity, right? I mean, one thing everyone says is that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not everywhere. And we ensure that, how are we giving both young boys and young girls the opportunity to not just to play, but to get the opportunity for their talent, for them to be seen, and what are the different avenues. So when I talk about our junior MBA, I'm talking about, it's called our junior MBA, junior WMBA programming. So for every camp that we have, or every clinic that we have, we always really aim to have the same amount of boys and girls playing, because that's, I mean, and I say it's not a big deal. Like, that's just how business should be done at this point. It shouldn't be something where it's like diversity being something that you have to aim for. It should just be the way you exist at this point. I would like to believe that the way a lot of organizations exist, and we're very intentional in that with our grassroots programming, and even down to, I would say, whenever, from our cultural activations as well, whenever we're working with influencers, are we ensuring that we have a balanced amount of men and women, making sure that the playing field is just constantly leveled is a big part of how I would say, we show up as a business here.
And you've been saying a lot of great things, a lot of the successes you've built on a very strong foundation. But I'm sure in the midst of it all, there are challenges.
Absolutely.
And what are some of those challenges, and how are you able to surmount them?
I mean, I think the biggest challenge for us in Nigeria is infrastructure. With football, for example, like you mentioned, you can pick up a ball and kick a ball anywhere. With basketball, that's not the case. Like, you need a rim, you need a court. So really ensuring that, how do we ensure that the average Nigerian kid has access to a basketball court? And that's been it's been a problem, and it's one of the reasons why, if I look at the work we're doing, where we're building courts, we're refurbishing courts, and working with partners as well to build courts. You already have so many other individuals, and I'll give a good example, like the Giants of Africa Foundation, where they're building basketball courts across Nigeria. So if they bring the hardware, the job of the NBA is we figure out, how do we find a way to bring the software, like the programming on there. And it's one of the things that we're working on and trying to figure out right now, is that you have individuals that have built basketball courts. There's some rundown courts. How can the NBA go there and help in refurbishing the courts? If you look at Campus Court on Lagos Island, we refurbished that court with the community there to give the kids there and all the schools around there the opportunity for them to play. We have a court as well in Ikorodu. It's doing things like that. Like in Abuja, we have several schools we adopted and refurbished basketball courts. That's kind of how the infrastructure has been a challenge, but I always see every challenge as an opportunity, as how do we get corporate partners to say, think of the likes of your...
So like the leveraging the partnerships. And
exactly.
In your earlier answer, you spoke about a challenge that's going on, I think my NBA Moment Challenge. Can you tell us about that?
A campaign. Oh, yes. I think this is, as a basketball fan, I find this to be a very interesting campaign. And I think everyone should get involved in it. So we launched this campaign to celebrate the NBA season. It's going to be an all-year campaign. It's called My NBA Moment NG. I know our fans all have exciting moments, whether it's a game-winning shot they saw, whether it's the first game they ever experienced, or when they came to any of our events. So we want our fans all around Nigeria and in the diaspora for them to share a video, 30 to 40 seconds with us, and for them to follow us on any of our social media accounts, and hashtag My NBA Moment NG, and you're going to see a lot of that coming up this year. And I would say you should record as well. You record your NBA moment. It can be anything, like, just because, like, we find that when fans are talking about their favorite moments, people get excited about it. So we want them to relive those moments with us. And for those who don't have an NBA moment yet, why don't you create one with us? You can sign up for League Pass and watch a game, and you can share your experience on that game with us, or find a way to attend one of our events here in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Gbemisola Abudu, and wish you all the best with this new season.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure being here.
Thank you.